Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Seattle Angel Conference Workshop Series. We're working on the question today of how sectors engage differently when we're going through the startup journey and the angel investing in particular. We have a couple of investors today who are active from different sectors. And so we'll do introductions and then have a little bit of a discussion and then open up for Q&A. And then we'll switch a little bit and focus in on the investor consequences of that question. So let me bring everybody up with a panel. Hold on, spotlight. There's one. And Jack, I gotta find Jack. I'm a little bit slow on the spotlights. All right. We have a third speaker who I think is still coming in, but we'll work on this now. So when we do our investing, we often end up with an investment thesis. And that investment thesis often focuses us essentially narrowly. But today we have a broader sense of that by bringing together people who think about investing from a different point of view. So, Jason, could you introduce yourself a little bit and talk a little bit about your angel journey, maybe a minute or so?
Sure. Jason Scharf, spent the last 20 plus years in bio and health, at pharma, med tech, genomics, consumer, you name it, I've touched it. Started my angel journey in 2018 at the first San Diego Angel Conference. Uh, Kind of learned my way through there, then kind of joined a group in San Diego called at the time Tech Coast Angels, now it's New Fund Ventures. Moved to Austin in 2020, started going direct cap table about at the same time, and have continued to kind of grow the checks and what I'm investing in. My focus is on bio and health. It's a little bit more specific than that. I've used kind of current terms, tech bio and health tech, and been heavily involved in kind of building up the ecosystem in Austin. And then I invest kind of across the board. I'm in the Boston company, Austin company, San Diego company, and the like. Yeah,
All right, thank you. And Jack, could you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. I'm Jack Canals. I am focused on consumer packaged goods, so bring some expertise from a sales perspective, working with large retailers, getting distribution for all different kinds of products, from non-food products like baby products, and then of course beverages and snacks and other consumer packaged categories. I'm not a traditional angel investor, but I focus primarily on commercial operation, and I do some work with the Brink in San Diego, working with young entrepreneurs, folks who are young in their business journeys, and helping them or advising them along the path.
Can you talk just a second about what the Brink is? Because I don't think we have the same kind of energy in Seattle around that process.
Absolutely. So the Brink is basically it's affiliated with the Small Business Council, and so we work through the University of San Diego, applying or allowing folks to have access to experts in various fields, such as biotech, for example. But consumer packaged goods is something that a lot of folks are working through, whether it's pet food products, new products for retail distribution, Amazon distribution, direct to consumer businesses. So it's essentially a network of experts in various fields that help entrepreneurs through their journey, whether it's pre-revenue, folks who are launching products, or even folks who are really farther along the process and have 4, 5, 10 years under their belt. So it's basically a network of professionals that help each other along the path.
Cool. Yeah, it seems like a very interactive group of people doing a really good job. So I appreciate you laying that out. And hopefully we'll get Dean in here in a little bit. Rohini's working on that. So while we're doing that, let's sort of start off the conversation. You know, when we started angel investing, we end up looking at whatever comes across. And in the San Diego Angel Conference, just like in the Seattle Angel Conference, we have no sector bias. And in Seattle, in particular, we have lots of people who are tech people who are joining us as investors, who then have very strong opinions about how things work because they believe the Bay Area venture pathway of software behaves this way, and away we go. And yet, when we look at regulatory constrained things like biotech and medtech stuff, or we look at consumer packaged good kinds of things, the the heartbeat of the business is fundamentally different at some way. Here we go. And so I wonder if you could spend a minute, Jason, sort of describe what sort of makes a biotech investment or a health tech, med tech investment different than what you might expect from a software only investment.
The funny thing is, it's starting to shift, right? And I think there's a lot that goes into the way we think about it. Like we have this kind of mindset, like, okay, so I have an asset, like a drug or device, it's got to go through FDA regulatory approval, it's going to push things out forever. One of the big things that I had to educate, I know a lot of people when I was at SDAC, was the exit occurs way before revenue for those type of companies, right? When you have that, and it's most likely an M&A. So if you're a pure play therapeutic, you want to be acquired at like phase one, phase two kind of situation, which is, for those who know, there's three phases to drug development in humans, like pure safety, dose finding, and then kind of the big one that does this work in efficacy. That is, I think, starting to change, and it's the capital stack becoming a little bit different because they're beginning to act more like software companies. This is especially happening with AI, robotics, kind of these horizontal technologies that have come in, and at the same time, when you start thinking about all the bio revolutions that are happening as well, from gene editing to wearables to GLP-1 that everybody knows about. So the nature to your question is actually we're at a moment now that things are shifting a lot. The biggest thing that I would push back on that people tend to think is like, oh, it's very, very highly regulated. You have the FDA. I'd like to ask anybody in fintech, are you not highly regulated, or in energy? And so there's a lot that actually aligns more with some of these things than I think the initial viewpoint comes in.
Oh, that's very interesting. We can talk some more about that. Jack, can you talk a little bit about how the CPD journey might be different for a company than just a regular software or a regular mom and pop might be, especially given the context of your consulting at the Brink?
Absolutely. Well, I can certainly tell you there's no exits in CPG pre-revenue, so that's a huge difference with how we go to market and how businesses change hands, et cetera. But I'm very interested in businesses or in CPG in general, where you can understand a customer problem. What problem are you solving? What is your product doing to help solve that problem? And then ultimately, what is the path to adoption? What are the mechanics of scaling, et cetera? Are you able to essentially build, or execute? Are your products able to bridge that gap? And really, at the end of the day, want to understand if that product is compelling and whether the company can grow and continue to acquire new customers, retain them, and grow profitably.
Right. And CPG particularly is an audience-based activity. You can have a very interesting product, but if it doesn't find an audience, then everything, dies on the vine pretty easily, I would say. And then given that you have specific sets of expenses that maybe aren't the same as what you might have in a software product, it can be a very quick death in some sense. Um,
CPG is certainly a more capital intense start or early phase, so it's often necessary to either have investors or some sort of access to capital to help get off the ground. For example, simply to build inventory and nothing else, you can't build a business in CPG without having something to actually sell.
Right. And actual sell and actually taste or what, the engagement with everybody is very much around the product in some ways. Which is very different with Jason. There's a whole collection of SBIR grants, STTR grants, BAA grants that provide the transition of research into whatever the new product is, there's not so much a granting opportunity for CPG, is there?
No, I haven't seen many. I mean, we do see some grants come from various, pitch competitions, things like that, that are often funded by a small business council or something like that in a certain region. But yeah, there are certainly more limited opportunities.
I'd
Yeah,
also be careful, John, on the SPIR and all those because they can become traps. You spend so
yeah,
much time
sure.
raising those funds, and you're like, I'm in this, versus the honesty and obviously something like you don't get to burn the boats moment. There are plenty
Right.
of companies that are not even the ones that are just the SBR mills that's all they do, but just be like, well, we can just get this much more if we just get to this versus I would say I don't have data, so this is more of a gut feel, but the number of companies that actually make it that are reliant heavily on SPIR early is very low.
Hmm.
Except
Uh,
when they're in the academic world, like and they're getting grants and maybe technology's being still figured out. But once they've gone into a company, like
right.
you end up leaning on the wrong things.
Right. And I would say my experience is that an SBIR grant is as much work, if not more work, than the fundraising for angels. So it's not free money in any sense.
And takes a long time and a very small amount of money. So the best teams, the
Yeah,
best founders are typically not going to tolerate that, right?
right. And on
Exactly.
on that note, let's have you introduce yourself, Dean, and then you can pick up the question of the things that you work on.
Yeah, hi everybody. Sorry I was a bit late. Had to create a Zoom account to get in. So my background is mostly as founder. So I spent almost 30 years as a founder. Most of my startups were unambiguous failures. But I had enough successes that I became an investor about 12 years ago, leaned really in on that, was a little bit of an oxymoron, but I would call myself a professional angel investor, personally invested in about 25 companies, ran a big angel group in San Diego that became New Fund Venture Group, which now has a venture group fund model. We have about 320 members, including some in Pacific Northwest. And our focus is primarily software, including AI, hard tech, so material science, semiconductor, kind of the hard stuff. And then we do, just by nature of a lot of us being in San Diego, we do a lot of life science, biotech, med devices as well, diagnostics, health tech.
Yeah. And so that's a pretty wide range of different sectors. And our initial focus for today is to think about how do the different kinds of companies, you know, get through that 0 to 100 kind of
Mhm.
arc along the way as they get into their fundraising pathway. You know, where are the resources? Where are the different kinds of things they need to pay attention to make their idea turn into a functional business at product market fit? So I spend a lot of time focused on the journey from I have the idea in the shower to I have product market fit and what needs to happen there. How do the different sectors that you look at play in that? Are there significant differences between the biotech from San Diego and the AI hardware thing in Seattle?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, even what Jason and Jack shared, like when we're looking at hardcore life science, we're looking at, scientific pedigree. We want to see non-dilutive funding. We want to see significant progress already made, maybe even some animal models with data. Whereas if we're doing an AI deal, it's a very, very different sort of, with AI deals, we want to see typically real innovation coming from the company, not just a SaaS wrapper around an LLM where all of the work is being done by the mangoes, as we're now calling them, the big companies that are, providing essentially the intelligence layers. And we don't actually have rules at New Fund, but we tend to gravitate around companies that have shown some proof of performance. So we're not investing as much as like the super early stage idea on a napkin. We really want to see some meaningful value being created before we invest. So if it's software, maybe you're at MVP level, maybe you have pilots or initial customers. Again, if it's life science, it can run the gamut, but we want to see, there's some progress towards whatever that next valuation inflection point will be.
Yeah. And so, we have a lot of software people in Seattle that come into the Seattle Angel Conference who say, in their first meeting, oh, I look at this biotech thing that's going to have a regulatory pathway, and that's evil. Regulatory is terrible. I'm not going to even look at them. And yet here you are diving in on them. Both you and Jason are happy to do that. Why would you be okay with looking at this thing with this horrible regulatory pathway?
The easy answer in the San Diego ecosystem is they're the most exciting deals. In reality, the last few years, we've had probably a dozen $1 billion plus exits of life science companies in the San Diego ecosystem. We've had probably zero $1 billion plus exits of tech companies. So, so that alone, when I first got into angel investing and early stage investing, I said I was only going to invest in things I understood, and that didn't, life science didn't qualify. But then being in a group where we have just amazing subject matter experts, PhD, MD, C-level execs in pharma. And so to sort of, I can provide this sort of entrepreneur layer of that, and then let them focus on like the science and the hard part. And my best exits as an investor have been, most of them have been life science or biotech, broadly.
Aren't they just like really long exits that take dozens and dozens of years to make that happen?
I mean, the med devices aren't, the therapeutics are. Jason's saying no, so I'm interested in his perspective on that. But the reality is some of the, we're going to know or not know in 6 months, and this tech company, non-life science tech company, is going to be acquired in a year or two. That almost never happens also. So they end up being long hauls as well. I sit on the board of 2 companies that are 10 plus years into the journey. They're not life science.
Right.
And so I'm interested in Jason's thoughts on the why therapeutics aren't long haul kind of.
I'm speaking in generalities. The longer the haul they are, the more likely, because they're not winning. And they're actually like some of the longest ones I've managed because they're not showing good data. And those are likely to be, you'll notice the exits, back to our point, like if you have something and by the way, it's when you start the clock, right? If you start the clock with like the scientific, like fun, that's a long time. And these are the pure play therapeutics. Now, I don't personally invest in pure play therapeutics. Like I'm in an AI drug engine that is driving it, not so I'm much more on the platform side of the equation. Also, I think what's back to the point, this is the theme before you got on, where I think things are shifting is we are moving towards on the bio and health side, more full stack companies. So before everything the company was a wrapper around an asset, and the asset was what was being acquired to move into the kind of the classic, either, Medtronic, Pfizer, whoever kind of system. Versus now we have a situation, if you're looking at like the unicorns that are coming out, are much more about like, we're going to, it takes, how are we thinking about the business model shift? How are we thinking about the way the company's moving? So that, back to my point, that at least the companies that I invest in, on the tech bio side, the likelihood that the CEO is the scientist is nearly zero, right? They might have an amazing CTO and that's kind of coming out, but these are the same kind of I'm going to chew glass kind of founders that are coming out of like the Bay and the like, and they feel less like Boston. They feel more like you see kind of the hard tech movement that's happening. It's a lot more about Ryman and hard tech and deep tech than necessarily and by the way, the system that is still existing of we've got this, we're going to out-license this, molecule from the university, go take it through XYZ milestones and then get it sold to, Pfizer or Merck. That still very much exists, but I think there's a transition happening now where we're going to this kind of full stack companies.
Yeah.
I'm curious for John, like this group that's on the call today, is it life science centric or is it mostly
no.
tech and software? Yeah.
No, we have a wide range of people here, and typically they're very, very early people, but some people are doing hardware and some people are doing AI and so forth. Yeah, Chris is doing deep tech physical AI.
I see Chris,
yeah, blah, blah.
Chris, deep tech physical AI. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the point on the regulation that you were asking, again, like that, the systems in place, whatever they are, I don't care whether you're in CPG, whether you're in bio, fintech, or SaaS, which of course is dying. The understanding those systems and how you're going to play, do you fit? And if you don't, okay, what are you going to do? Right? How are you going? What's the hinge point? How are you going to change it? How are you going to kind of, if you don't fit, it's not, you can't ignore it. Right?
Right.
Like I've had a number of times, I'll give you a great example, like pharmacogenomics software, which is like, okay, should I take drug A, B, C, or D, right? And based on my genomics, which one should I do? We've known forever that's a great thing, right? However, they continue to not go anywhere, even though I've seen a lot of them. And so I remember being asked when someone was pitching me, and this is the end of the pitch. And I asked, okay, so look, why hasn't it worked? And they said, like, oh, well, reimbursement sucks. So what's your plan? Is it prayer? You hope somebody else figures it out and you ride behind, or are you just going to fail like everybody else? And like those are the questions that you need to, especially when you get more into deep tech, hard tech, like the truly big technical shifts that don't fit well into the system. You have to answer the question of how are you going to then, what are you going to do about it? If you don't have that answer, you're going to just be on the ash heap like everything else.
And that's like classic, like founder 101 kind of stuff, right? Like I always talk about what I call, like, we all know what IQ is. It measures intelligence, and EQ measures emotional intelligence. I talk about JQ, which is like judgment quotient. It's like we're looking at founders who they're going to have all these forks in the road. And every time they take the wrong fork, penalty $50,000, penalty 2 years of time. Like, and so like we're looking for those founders who are like going to like have the judgment to like make the right choice more often than not.
Or at
And you
least
have to go, I mean,
make
going
small
through,
experiments.
I highly recommend Mike Maples' Pattern Breakers book. It's just a way to think about these things because the point is you need to go to the future. I have the found you need to go to the future and then work backwards. And
Right.
you're going to take, to your point, like you're going to take some, like everybody. I don't care like what it made. Name your favorite founder. They all make those mistakes. But then what, right? Did you take the learnings from it?
Yeah.
Did you make the mistake quickly and then go? I mean, the pivot exists for a reason, right? These kind of things.
Yeah. I mean, we're a little bit off topic, but there's another thing I learned years ago, was doing a pre-mortem, which is make the assumption that your venture failed and then come up with all the reasons why it might have failed, and then don't do whatever it would take for that to happen as you enter the early stages of your venture.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Say the name of that book again, Jason.
Pattern Breakers.
Okay, cool. And now, Jack, you're like in a very different kind of space than these two, right? All of the kinds of things they're working on tend to be hard and complicated, innovation driven in terms of technology kinds of things. What are the constraints on a CPG company in terms of that early journey? Are they fundamentally having business model problems like they were just talking about, or is there something else in their way?
Yeah, I mean, the key part about being a founder in CPG is surrounding yourselves with subject matter experts. I like to joke that CPG is not rocket science. It's not even life science, right? It's a little bit more simple. And I mean that with all humility, but you have to surround yourself with great subject matter experts because you don't just pull someone off the street who knows how to do this. At the end of the day, if you want to be successful in CPG, you have to have a problem that you are solving with your product. So if that's filling someone's belly with a certain type of food, having a cleaner ingredient list, having a hydration product, for example, that delivers a certain amount of electrolytes or something like that, how are you going to communicate that to a retailer, get on their shelf? And then the most important part is, how are you going to stay on the shelf? That's the hard part. That's where I and my colleagues and friends in the industry make our money and really, foster our careers is how do we keep shelf space and grow it? And what are the keys behind that?
Right. The management of the distribution is such a much bigger problem for you, as well as the stages of manufacturing, right? I can't go and produce a whole plant to do this thing. Typically, I'm using contractors along the way, and that fundamentally shifts in huge jumps in behavior along the way, which maybe in a software scenario, you don't have that at all.
Right.
That kind of thing.
But there's a lot
Finding-
in common. I mean, the scaled manufacturing, to your point, like Partech has that. How do we create the products? How do we, so the piece I want to push these is there's a lot more that rhymes across these things than makes them different. There's 1,000
Okay.
variables that make up any sector, and your unique play of those variables is what makes it unique. But then manufacturing is across many sectors, regulations across many sectors. It's not as like I can never learn anything from these things. It always drives me crazy when people in biohealth like we're special and interesting. Like you're not that special.
Yeah. We still all have 10 fingers kind of problem. Yeah, absolutely. I want to leave a little bit of space for people to ask questions because we're going to have the next group come in 15 minutes. So let me take all of you down off of the spotlight here and let's look at everybody and see if there are questions that people might have and see if we can have a conversation about that. And this is just a slow manual process of me moving through everything. All right. So if you have a question, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button or going into reactions and clicking on raise hand. And then we'll keep talking a little bit and you guys can turn on your videos and we can have a discussion. If there's issues around your early startup process where you're having trouble, maybe some of these guys have some answers. Yeah. I'll pick on Chris. Oh, nope. There we go. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, other Chris, but still works.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, I have a question. I'm currently doing some due diligence to become a co-founder at the company that I'm looking at. And forgive me, I came in late, so if this was already covered, apologies. But I find that my founder currently is casting a significantly wide net. He is thinking about manufacturing, retail, brand, and he wants to pitch to every VC in the world. And I feel like he's missing three things, which is product market fit, brand identity, as well as a ability to reach the right investors. And so I wanted to get you guys' input. How do you guys convince a founder that they're walking aimlessly? That their approach is what I would consider not viable for this business.
Why are you trying to convince them?
Because I believe in the technology that they've built. I want to be part of their company, but at the same time, I just think it's a one-person problem. It's just our founder that's having a problem seeing the gap in the business. And that's what I want to convince them out of and save a co-founder that's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, I mean that's a question. There's so many things to unpack there, right? Like, I mean, we just talked about judgment, right? Which is like, I think you're concluding that judgment might be lacking in that founder. And again, we only hear one side of the story, so his or her approach might be the right approach, right? We don't know all the details. But one of the things that helps, particularly for inexperienced founders, is advisors and being coachable. And I use the term coachable not to mean follow other people's directions, but be receptive to feedback. I sat on the board of a company, an amazing founder. He was the most coachable guy you ever met until you gave him bad advice, and then he's like, "That's the dumbest thing I've never," I was on the board. Another director said, "You shouldn't sell through distribution. You shouldn't go international." And he's like, "Wrong. We're selling through distribution. We're going international." And it was successful. When we had an offer to sell the company, it was a $40 million offer. I said, "You got to take this." He said, "No, I think I could get more." 20 days later, he sold the company for $111 million. So, I think the bottom line is, if you see a founder who's inexperienced and making mistakes, the best thing to do is surround them with people who could share experiences that might help frame what he's doing. It's like the Gestalt method, right? Where you share your experience. You don't just say you're doing something wrong, right?
Yep. Sounds like more voices might be able to be helpful in here, and then evaluating whether or not they can actually pivot.
And I joined a VC-backed company, in very, very early. One of four co-founders, and the co-founder CEO had some, let's call them defects, and it was brutal for the next several years because of that. So, you have a unique opportunity to make a decision right now on, to Jason's comment, if
Trying to
this is the
convince
place,
them.
you only get to pick one of these, right? It's like you're going to be in it all in, for a while. So you have to decide if this is disqualifying or not.
And it's an expensive decision no matter which one you make.
Yeah.
So you think about it. I think the Pattern Breakers book might be a useful conversation to have with him. So I put the link into the chat. Are there other questions that people want to address? Narendra, how about if you ask a question? You're you're still on mute.
There are very, very, very good discussions, and particularly I'm pleased to see a lot of discussions about biotech, and I'm running that one. So the last actually, I think I can't see because I'm on the small screen right now. Jason, I think he was talking about founder making mistakes, and another question was SBIR versus equity financing. So yeah, I mean, it is a kind of entrepreneur's dilemma. I mean, how much effort you have and how much equity you already have put in so that you can have in vivo data, because people are looking for in vivo data before you are even able to do something. And another is that question, founders making mistakes. I mean, they are either not selling early or they're selling late. So I'm one of this person. I will be very happy to have somebody come with me on board if someone wants to come, some business development guy, and guide me through. So I'll be very happy if someone here either suggest me or help me out.
And so Narendra is doing a biotech thing by himself.
Yes.
And there's always this question of how do I get money to do this thing, because there's big chunks of cash in the way, but I haven't gotten enough of any of the demonstratable things to actually get to a funding round. So where would you start, Jason?
It depends on like where, so I know nothing, right? But
Yeah.
what you have coming into this, but I mean, it's called the Valley Death for a reason, right? This is the kind of have the angels, this is where it's the narrative and the story. You also have to have, look, I'm going to push, you have to have some data. There's a reason you think this is an idea, right? It's not like I've just got this out of the top of my head. It's like, okay, here's the data that exists that makes me think going down XYZ path is important.
So Narendra, give us the one sentence value proposition of what you're aiming at.
Yeah, so one sentence, I mean, I'm aiming at this moment is definitely equity where I can show the proof of concept. So little longer that I have shown demonstrated very good data in vitro, and I'm waiting from the partner to get the funding, which already committed to me that I will be having some $300,000 so that I can get in vivo data. There are some hiccups getting funds from India. But I am looking for, I have already demonstrated that things are working in my hand, but I'm exploring this to go into a different directions like in the Parkinson's. And that is where I'm looking for raising for the fund. So value proposition is that we already have a collaboration. We already have shown demonstrated strong, very strong data comparable to the industry standard. And I want to expand into a different different unmet need, which is Parkinson's. So how do I go about that?
So you have a drug candidate that you want to
Yeah.
put into a different aspect, and you've proven
No,
technically,
no.
you've proven
Let me
technically it
correct
has
that.
a benefit.
Every drug which I'm going to make, it will be very specific to a particular molecular targets in particular disease. So the
Yeah.
one which is going into NAS, it has nothing to do with the Parkinson's, which is very different and very specific, but the modality is very similar. So once things are working in the company, you know how the different drug will behave, but in different tissue.
So at least for me, things are triggering a little bit, Jason. I wonder if there's things that are triggering for you in what he just said.
I mean, the the earliest thing is you have the modality, you have this for the other the other indication of Parkinson's. And so my question is, and I'm guessing I'm guessing you're an academic, that's just you're from that. So part of the question here is why are you spinning out the Parkinson's company now? Like, it feels like
No,
we
I'm
should,
not spinning it out. I'm building GenomeRx to expand into three different areas. One is already collaboration that they will fund all the way up to phase one, no matter how many targets they want to take. It is very specific to the liver. So we have already made the linker, the way it will be
okay,
behaving
so
in
why okay, so the piece that hits me right now with my, like, if you have this traction in that, like,
yes.
this does not seem like the time to be jumping to Parkinson's unless there is a
Not re Yeah, not really, because what happens is the deal which I have, I get only 25% shares in the later on. So, and then it will be spun off. Once my collaborator gets very comfortable that things are working the way we have said, and they are understand after POC. So this will be will be a totally joint venture. That is the whole idea. That NAS mass liver area will be a different company where GenomeRx will own 25% and they will own 75% and they will fund everything there. In GenomeRx, then I will be focusing on the CNS area. So it will start with the Parkinson's because there are no diseases, no disease modifying therapy. And once I am able to demonstrate how I'm going to deliver there, then it will be expandable into different CNS space because they are all going into the similar issues. And the third area which I want very, very dear to me is dry AMD. And they are all areas where there are hardly any drugs.
So I'll put a stake in this one. So what I'm hearing is a research project that has many options, but that none of the pathways that they were talking about before have been worked through, and you haven't pruned the tree of possibilities to a business yet. You're still in the big capital R research conversation, hoping to tack a business in there somewhere, and it's not
Mhm.
framed.
Well, it is framed because a lot
And
of research has been done in siRNA field,
I
and the
understand, but
established player,
that's all
yes,
over on the technology side, not the
yeah,
business
yeah,
side. So I want to
not the
get
business side.
Jason's response to what I just said.
Yeah.
Does what I just said make sense to you and what you're hearing from Narendra?
this is yeah, as I said, this doesn't we're going in a lot of different directions.
Right. Lots of complications at a time when you already any single one business would have its own pile of complications that's big enough, but we're piling in a whole bunch of possibilities at the beginning that haven't been pruned down into a business yet. And that makes investors twitch, or at least makes this investor twitch. And so we should think about that a little bit.
Okay.
So let's see. Any other questions that people want to put up about where they're at with their business and where they're going? How about the other Chris? You're doing deep tech.
We are. And I don't have questions, but I really appreciated Dean's statement about just picking the path, but then knowing like when it forks off, because I stepped in as a consultant three years ago as a free consultant. I worked for free for a year. And now I'm CEO and co-founder of the company. And it wasn't a pivot. It was looking ahead and seeing forks. And as someone with a business dev and revenue background and strategy, it was really important to kind of see that. So it's not a question, but it was just an appreciation of that comment, of that focus. It's good to keep in mind and to like look at your priorities and strategize and stuff constantly, and reassess where you're at all the time to make sure that you can be moving ahead, as fast as possible, but hopefully you're not breaking very much.
Yeah, and those forks, to be clear, weren't intended to mean pivots. They're like they're little things. Like I was the company I referenced earlier, where I was co-founder. We raised $30 million in venture capital. We did something as innocent as hiring a serious sales VP, and we thought it's time to sell the product. It's ready to go to market. The first thing that sales VP did was hire 4 regional sales sales directors and 20, sellers under them, like literally 26 new headcount in the company. And his argument was, we're going to know whether some very powerful people gave us money to figure this out, and we're going to know in 6 months whether it's working or not. So why not go big? And of course, we burned millions and millions of dollars before we figured out product market fit. And his whole premise was wrong, because we're now 19 years later, the company's still in business and it still hasn't figured it out. All the co-founders are gone. But so like something as little as we can afford his salary, let's hire this thing, like it's completely derailed the company. That was a fork. We took the wrong fork, right?
Or like
Yeah,
for us, it hasn't been, a giant pivot, because the tech is the tech. It just happens to serve a lot of markets, but it's that timing of, okay, like it's like they're the chasms and we're crossing the chasm, but this is the research academia chasm. And it's
Yeah.
great for validation, but it's not the long term, for scale and growth. And being able to, when you're founded in research, being able to look at that and say, okay, this is great and all, but that's not truly our primary customer base. That's our validation base. And, and being able to like see that and start to time that. Yeah, it's been a journey. But I really appreciate your point with that, and being mindful of where those little forks and that person or that story or that logo or like anything could affect where you want to go.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So I want to dive in on that a little bit, because I think a lot of times when we ask for traction or we ask for momentum, we're looking that there's some engagement with an audience, but almost all the time for the companies we're looking at, the sub-market segmentation of knowing what the different choices are of the different markets and how those markets are reacting is at best undercooked. And I want to ask Jack, when you think about CPG is really dependent on audience, because that fundamentally changes your distribution. You're not going to go into the Walmarts of the world in one way, but then in other ways, you would pick that as your primary target, right? So how do you think about momentum in CPG in terms of submarkets?
That's an interesting question. I mean, first and foremost, real quick, I just want to add on that I would agree with Jason and Dean about some of the co-founder or founder attributes they describe. In CPG, a key element is the ability to discern fact from assumption. So if you can do that, you're going to put yourself and your product and really the foundation of the company on a positive foot to start off. So I think at the end of the day, there's kind of it's a bit business schooly, so I apologize if it comes off that way. But there's the 3 Ds in CPG: desire, decide, and delight. So is your product going to meet those 3 Ds, or how is it going to meet those 3 Ds? That is a critical element to everything you do, from a distribution strategy. What retailers are you going to launch with, big, small, in the middle? Are you going to go into mass merchandisers like a Walmart? Are you targeting natural stores like a Sprouts or a Whole Foods, for example? But desire is basically creating demand or acknowledging the product fit that you're going for. Desire, or I should say, deciding is at the shelf. So when that consumer, that shopper is at the shelf, how are they going to decide to pick up your product? What is going to motivate them to decide? And then at the end of the day, are you delighting that customer? Are they going to come back and repeat? That's arguably the most important one. They're all very important. But what strategy are you going to develop around the 3 Ds, and how does your product fit there?
And so when you talk about the difference between a Whole Foods and a Walmart and that set of choices, right? There's really quite a number of choices there, even though the default is to aim for a very narrow set of distribution things. You really have many, many more places that you could go. It's just different, right? I could be doing it online. I could do it in person. I can be doing it in terms of, Cisco or not Cisco, depending on which particular distribution mechanism I'm using. So how do you decide that choice of desire beyond market size?
That's really the key to understanding who your consumer or shopper is and what product what need or problem it's fixing. Because, for example, if you've got a premium hydration product, I'll make something up, that is going to cost more than your average Gatorade or Powerade, for example, jumping right into a Walmart or Costco is probably not going to put your best foot forward. That's not meeting your consumer, your shopper where they're at. It's going to be more along the lines of a Target on the mass merchandising side, a retailer, for example, that has slightly higher index on income and education and other things like that. Whole Foods and Sprouts and some of these natural retailers, you're going to see, again, people with higher disposable incomes typically shopping at those stores. So knowing your shopper or who you're going after is critical to developing that initial go-to-market strategy. I would caveat that and say you never want to go right into a big Walmart or a Costco. You want to start on the smaller or medium side to make sure that you you really put that product to the test. It is extremely expensive to launch with these larger retailers. There's a ton of hidden costs that if you don't know what you're doing, you can very, very quickly get underwater with what we call deductions in our business. In other words, when those customers are paying your invoices, they're deducting a whole litany of things that you may or may not understand. So without that expertise, going into big retailers is definitely a very risky game.
Absolutely. And even if you're very successful, it may trigger things that cost you a lot of money to make it so that it goes, and you are so successful that you kill the company. So there's definitely risks there. And then if we look at, the biomed tech mechanisms, the sales side is really a much narrower conversation, right? We're not spending hardly any time on dealing with the nuances of shelf placement, right? We're just trying to figure out whether or not the insurance will reimburse or whether or not there's some specific mechanism, right, Jeff? Jason?
Totally disagree.
Okay.
It depends on where you are in the stack, right? Like if you are in health tech, you might be selling to hospitals and selling your doctors off, and it looks a lot like any of this kind of, do I go for the big, enterprise customer versus the small customer? I mean, the thing that Jack said about it's a lot to deal with to go into Whole Food. Like this kind of runs across, all enterprise, right? Like, do I go sell to Google? Do I go sell to Ascension? It's all that kind of, I may get the logo and not worth all the energy that we're going into versus, and they go sell smaller companies first. Same thing on like, say, some of the tech bio side. If you on the pure, you're right, on the pure, asset driven, I've got this, med device, I got this drug, understanding that path. I mean, one of the things I gave a TEDx talk about this last year, truly novel things. Like we have a cure for sickle cell anemia that Vertex has out there, and it's had for like 2 years. It's selling terribly because we don't know what the business model for cures is. And so the idea, and so you can't just say like, well, this is, if you got a 10% improvement, fine, that fits really well in. The sales cycle is very well understood. The reimbursement in that case is very well understood. If the more novel the thing that you have, and I don't care whether it's bio, CPG, enterprise, hard tech, whatever, the more you have to think about what is the sales cycle? How do I think about the customers? Is it completely new? What's the budget we're trading off with? How do they get ROI from it? And so like this comes across like all of these things.
Very interesting. So David asks an interesting question in the chat about, we're expecting at some point we're looking for product market fit. And there's some notion that the company expresses that they have momentum with the customer base. And David's asking, how can we independently check that? Let me find it.
There's no better way than in 2026 to do that for many products, right? You can stand up, and again, I don't know the product, right? But if it's a traditional product selling to enterprise or it's traditional product selling to consumer, you can set up a website, you can pre-sell the product. The customer doesn't even need to know that you're pre-selling the product. You just send them a sorry, we're not fulfilling yet in your area or whatever. You can test that. You can interact with LinkedIn audiences. There's so many ways. Now it's different it's very different for somebody to say, this sounds really interesting versus I'm writing you a check or giving you my credit card. But there are so many things that an engaged, motivated, ambitious founder can do to assess product market fit in the early stages.
And then how do we as investors validate that set of experiments? Because our experience is that they don't distinguish the people saying, oh, that's cool from the people that would buy.
I mean, if we can, we're buying, right? Like, you know, particularly if it's B2C, we're subscribing as a user. We're like evaluating it ourselves. We're talking to customers if there are early customers or prospects or partners. But part of the fun of this game is sometimes you just don't know. We're making an investment right now on a, you know, what we're calling a street fighter founder that is a little bit gray hat and you know, has some, you know, early enthusiasm, and we can see this thing going big, but there's actually very little data to support that.
So the founders
I'd also push, I'm sure
Go ahead.
Jack might agree with me on this. At the round we're talking about, so angel, pre-seed, seed, if an investor's like, well, do you have product market fit? Like, what are we talking about? Like, no one has product market fit at that stage. Like, it should be experience. They should have ideas on how they're getting there before they're scaling. But this idea that you're getting PMF at this point is ridiculous.
Yeah, David.
But we do find cases where, you know, I coined the term like a high-tech sledgehammer after a mosquito, like where it's like so obvious that, you know, this is not going to improve lives, right?
You can get to a lot of the no's. I agree with that, but this idea, but your point of like, if you're in, you know, super takeoff mode, right? Because of this, because you hit product market fit, you're probably not, you know, you're looking at something different.
Right. Yeah. And that's the, you know, the classic kind of, you know, criticism of early stage investors, angel investors is like, you know, every deal is either too early or too expensive, right? It's like, It's like we want to see the progress, but we don't want to pay for it. Right.
Right. The Alliance of Angels people say they want to invest just before product market fit.
Right. David has his hand up, John.
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, that's me. From that question was not about product market fit. That was a question about customer problem fit, which I think happens before the product market fit. And I'm trying to figure out like what are y'all doing in that diligence process that like demonstrates that, you know, that founder has tried their product in 6 different you know, locations and identified that this customer group is actually who's gonna put their claws in and move. Like, is there a report? Do you look at for the experiments that they have run? Do you, like, what can you ask for that they've done, you know, in the stuff that is happening before product market fit? Because that's where SAC looks, and all of us, but lots of folks are looking.
We'd like to see empirical, like kind of like casual empirical evidence. If we see, like, if the reports get too sophisticated, we start wondering if the founder is the right fit at the early stages. We want them moving fast and that kind of stuff. But I mean, I'm interested in Jack's thoughts on the CPG side.
Yeah, I go back to kind of what I said earlier. I think when you're really looking at how the problem is being fixed, you really got to press on what are the assumptions and what are the facts that we have today. Like, what is the core thesis of what we're trying to solve with this product? I think a lot of times that can lead to product market fit, right? So if you create something that is founded in facts or factual, you know, evidence, then your product will fit ultimately, or I think you can really understand that problem, or I should say product fit is there once you're able to really separate fact from fiction, what you're leaning in on, essentially.
So I use the words, the difference between believing something and knowing something. We believe that this is going to be true, but when we've measured it and we have data, now we know that it's true, or at least we put bounds on our knowing, and that can help us along the way. Yes,
I mean, this whole game is, I think Peter Thiel initially coined it. This whole game is, whether you're a founder or you're an investor, it's having a truth that nobody else believes, right?
Right. Absolutely. Danny?
Yes, hi. I have kind of a general question. I come from Montreal, Canada. I now live in Barcelona, Spain. I started businesses and raised funding in both continents. and now I'm starting a new business in here in Europe. Um, I don't know how many of you are either living right now in North America or in Europe and have been like going in or living in both continents, but how do you see the difference in investor behavior or the investment world in general, how people tend to evaluate companies based on the markets, knowing that, of course, just in the US, there's a huge difference between the Silicon Valley, for example, or a Seattle region. So I don't know if any of you have experience in in investing in Europe and in North America and or else, because I also started businesses in the Middle East, so it's a different behavior as well.
So, Jason, Jack, and Dean, are any of you looking outside North America?
So we have investors in our group that focus almost exclusively outside of North America. In fact, one of our principals has Cross Ocean Ventures, which is like specific. He's a Turkish immigrant and he focuses outside. We just made an AI investment in a Lithuanian company, but they did create a C Corp in the US. And our fund construct requires we only can invest in US C Corps.
So even if you're looking at a Lithuanian or Estonian company in the end, they're on the journey into the US market.
Yeah, or our members are investing directly outside of our fund. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so the thing that we have in Seattle Angel Conference is that we created the Transatlantic Angel Conference, which is run now 9 times. And we see that there are fundamental differences. These folks are in Southern California kinds of places, or at least started there. And so there's a habit there that's very different than what we see in Spain. I think there's a lot more clustering in Europe where people are much narrower in where they're doing things. It's pretty clear that in Spain, the investors definitely want to see much more investor protection along the way. They're trying to not lose their money more than they're trying to make lots of money, which is a very different conversation in a bunch of ways. But there is in October a EBON event I think it's Luxembourg. And I think that would probably be a good thing for you to go pay attention to, and you can ask the investors themselves directly.
Yeah, if you could put information in the chat about this conference, and just so you know, I actually participated in the TAC9 competition, so I know a bit. It's just I wanted to get kind of a different perspective from different people on how they see it.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. We have a couple of people here that I see faces that I recognize that are joining us for the Seattle Angel Conference 30 questions. I sort of use this as a turning point to focus more on the investor side of this question of investment thesis and sector and the behavior in sector. So I see Angela and I see Kathleen and I see David that are all participating. So I want to offer the opportunity for you to ask a question that leads us into a conversation about what sector should I be investing in, or how should I think about XYZ sector or something along those lines. Anybody have any questions? I can pick on Angela first. She's got the smile that suggests she's thinking about something.
Well, no, I've really enjoyed the conversation thus far. I like the, as I'm thinking about I think about my own products, obviously, and this is, as I'm building my own startup and kind of, I think about, D2C or, direct to consumer or, B2B, B2C, and then the whole SaaS wrapper thing. And I'm personally looking at, I'm coming as a physician, I'm in the health space. And so the idea of like investing, I've never invested in an angel before, so this whole thing is great for me. I'm excited to learn more, but I appreciated Dean's comments, I think, on going outside of your expertise, because I think that's where you naturally want to gravitate is what you feel like and what you can evaluate thoroughly from a the fit and the usability aspect. Like if I were evaluating things on, the health side and the clinical decision support tools and things like that. So I'm going to be interested to learn how, I think, counting on other people on the team for other aspects. And I'm also kind of happy to learn that I don't have to have product market fit all worked out right now at my stage, because I was feeling like you can't get investors until you really are more at the go-to-market stage. So anyway, I don't really have a question right now, but it's all good food for thought.
So let's turn that into a question. So um, all of you are investing in things that are wide, and you are typically using groups to get a view on things that you don't know. So how do you start with finding other investors to work with that are going to be useful for you? Jack, you want to pick that up first?
Well, I mean, in terms of investors, I would say that in CPG specifically, we always look to bring people into the fold that bring some sort of a subject matter expertise. So it's not just about the cash, it's not just about getting off the ground with it. It's about someone who can realistically be almost like an advisor to the business. And so a lot of times CPG fundraising and venture capital, if you want to use that term in CPG, we don't typically call it VC, but if you want to find pre-seed and early seed money, it typically is with companies that have, or the term we use primarily is incubators. So an example would be Kavu Ventures, for example, has a lot of men and women who've been very successful in CPG. They have an eye for not only for talent, but for products that solve a consumer need. Sometimes even create a subcategory, if you will, like a low sugar soda, better for you soda, something along those lines. So a lot of times when you're looking for early investors, it's a great founder who's coachable, who can understand, again, separation of facts from assumptions, and then ultimately people that can add some sort of an expertise, whether it's they're fitting in with one of those 3Ds I mentioned earlier. Are they going to help you, create awareness or create desire for your product? Are they going to help you get into retailers? Do they have a relationship with the retailer? Are they sales? Do they have a sales background? And then finally, are they product innovators? Flavor innovation is critical in food and beverage. And so if you don't have a product that tastes great or know how to create products that taste great and innovate on those flavors, then you're not going to get anywhere. So typically, early investment is from people who have some sort of an experience within CPG.
And so I have a great idea in CPG, and I go to the regular generic TCA meeting in San Diego, and I get relatively happy thoughts, but relatively zero um, engagement for investments, right? Because I'm actually in the wrong place. They're
Yeah,
not.
I mean, I think TCA transitioned to New Fund 10 years ago or 8 years ago, and I think one of the things that changed there is we don't typically spend a lot of time in areas where we don't have expertise. So by coincidence, CPG is one of those blind spots where we don't do a lot of CPG deals because we have 25 members from Qualcomm who do semiconductors and wireless, and we have a dozen members from Illumina who do genomics, and so like I mean we kind of and we have tons of like Google and Amazon and who are doing robotics, and so we kind of focus on like where we can actually provide value or where our Rolodex can provide value.
Mhm. Yes,
And then the
and
rest we can send off to Jack and to our partners who we know are good at things that we're not.
yeah, that's good. Angela, go ahead.
Okay, so let's say I really get a lot out of this conference and I learned that I love investing and I love, the process of vetting young founders and enterprises and things. How can I get involved as an investor with the subject matter expertise that I have as a physician and in health systems and with physician networks to be able to then help other investor funds, investor groups, angel groups to say like, how do I get on as a subject matter expert with different investment vehicles?
Jason, you want to take that?
Well, So it depends, right? So I think, and I think you were here when I gave my first part of it. I started the Angel Group. I then joined New Fund. I've since left New Fund. I do things on my own. I have an investment partner as well. So there are lots of angel groups. This is going to be, sorry, this. I think that angel groups as uh, the intention is strong. I'm generally, I say this as someone who's gone through, there's a lot of, I think, group dynamics theory that doesn't make them work really well. There's also adverse selection issues. And so like the best founders don't go to angel groups, right? And so you automatically kind of get that issue. And so one of the things that you see like as in SF and why like the angel groups don't matter, right? What matters is the mini syndicates. It's the like, oh, I got this great company. Yo, buddy, like let's go and throw those in and let's go together. Like that's the best kind of environment that is working. And I think at this point, maybe New York as well, but like SF is the only place that really has that at scale. Austin's beginning to get that. Where you're seeing that. I'm finding out a lot of people are invested in this unicorn, that unicorn, kind of. They're all just kind of throwing money. The founders are throwing money to each other. And so it's a journey, right? It's a situation of like you just got to get out there and talk and learn and be part of it. And so and really just I mean I kind of joke like the mistakes that I made in 2018 and 2019 in terms of investing is like are helping me now, not bank account, like those companies don't really move the needle, but it's a scarring system in learning. And the thing that I would say, and I say this to almost anybody thinking about being angels, right? Unless you're willing to kind of do the syndicate, which is really like you make quick. It's not the process. Like they're quick decisions. I know the founder. I go in, kind of situation. I actually think 80% of people who are interested in angel investing should be LPs, not angels, because if you want access to the class, if you want to be able to help these kind of things. But like to really be a good angel, I mean, Dean, I don't know how long you've been doing this for a long time. Like it's a long time. It's learning.
So I want to comment on that, but I also want to get to Angela's question, which was as a physician, as a subject matter expert, how can she like use that to like get exposed to deals and participation? And the best way to do that is to just develop your personal brand, right? To participate in events and happenings and things where those who have access to deals that would be interesting to you want to party with you. They want you to look at a deal. They want you to maybe take the board seat, so that you can take care of their money because you know what's going on in that space, or participate on a scientific advisory board. But it takes, it does take elbow grease and some heavy lifting to be like the acknowledged expert in whatever it is you want to pursue. And that's with or without you writing a check, right?
Sure. One of the things I want to make sure we say is that there are many different kinds of groups with many different heartbeats, and they behave differently. On the East Coast, we see a lot of what I would call physician angel groups, where the whole group is a collection of physicians. I do not know of any of those on the West Coast, right? I know of none of those in Seattle.
I mean, there's life science angels, but to Jason's point, they're not that relevant on the, in the bigger picture in the Bay Area. I mean, what we did at New Fund to address exactly because I was a founder, like I knew as a founder, an angel group was where you went to like turn, 3 yeses into 50 nos. Like that was like the old white guys supper club kind of thing. And, what we did at New Fund to fix that is 100% of our members have to be writing checks. So nobody's in it for entertainment. We're leading with a fund, and we're making a decision after the first due diligence meeting. So the message to the strong founder is, engage with us. We're absolutely for less than 30 days. And if you inspire us, you'll get a $500,000 check to start. And then if you want to take individual checks, it'll be bigger than that, and we can help you syndicate it elsewhere. So we tried to change the narrative a little bit. But yeah, there's no question that the outlier founders that don't fit into the mold sometimes get filtered out, and those are the ones that have the asymmetric returns, right?
Often, and often we can't tell the difference between crazy and crazy good. And so they get, certainly in the group
I like
process,
that.
they get
Yeah.
filtered out, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing is that there's as a part of the ACA, the Angel Capital Association, there is a bio-oriented, medical-oriented collection of angel groups that get together once a month and talk about their stuff. And so there's internal things between angel groups, which will also help you build relationships, and through those relationships, engagements that then can create
Yeah.
that value for you. But
And
again,
at New Fund,
I
I
want
mean, at New Fund, we have neurosurgeons and oncologists and, and
yeah,
very long tail stuff as well. Left heart access cardiologists and a lot of, so, depending on what somebody's subject matter expertise is, there's long tail kind of opportunities.
What happens in a situation where, like, you're looking at an angel group? It's by definition a bunch of investors with different backgrounds. One of the problems I've seen is sometimes there just isn't a group that has specific expertise in something, but there's a company that's really making a lot of sense and intuitively sounds good. But the question I have frequently is, how do you know that what the founder's saying is real? That they're, giving you the right metrics, that those metrics are relevant, that the financials are what they say they are, because frequently they don't understand how to correctly present financial forecasts. And
I think
what are your suggestions for how to flesh that out?
I think there are two quick things on that. On the external to the company, the internal to the company. The external to the company, now has never been a better time to be able to prepare yourself. You can go into AI and be like, the biggest problem is, like, if you're talking to the right people, the world-renowned expert in field X should be the person pitching you. So they will know more about this than you, even if you're tangentially aligned with it, whatever it may be. But the ability to get better prepped about, like, make me smart about this area. We are all have superpowers. So that's one. Two, on the internal metrics, there's two parts. There's the evidence side, like, okay, like, show me a contract, show me, like, what, like, these kinds of things that, like, to your point, prove me out. I would be careful, again, especially at the stage that we're talking about. Well, here's your financial model. Those are worth nothing, right? And they're worth nothing in any sense, because no one can predict. Like, it's always up and to the right. They are better to understand how the person is thinking than it is to be doing that. Like, if you're doing it series B, C, then the financials matter at a point of, like, okay, I'm looking at this as a financial.
When I'm looking at financials, I'm thinking about, do they understand how they make money? Like, what are the
Right, yes.
things that should be focused on?
Yeah, that's the better question than necessarily those kind of things. And then to your point, that's the due diligence process. Like, don't ask them, like, are you actually going to make 3 million next year, whatever the number is. It's asking them about the, like, okay, how are we, what's the turnaround, what's the sales cycle? Who do you have your guys, like, things like that.
Yeah, and you learn the tricks as you do this for a while. So when a founder says, we're talking to Sony about $1 million deal, we know that means they sent an email to somebody to Sony, but they haven't replied yet, right? Or when they say we have $6 million in contracted ARR, it's typically just a few questions to learn that revenue is neither contracted annual nor recurring, right? Like, I mean, there's, like, you start to learn how to do that in friendly, non-threatening, conversational ways to sort of get to the bottom. Because the job of the founder is to be 100% truthful and completely misleading. Like, that's what they do. That's what I did as a founder. So as an investor, we're going through a due diligence process, not to find a risk that causes us to not invest, but to find everything that if it happens after we invest, we won't be surprised. So we can handicap that risk and discount it and then come up with a price that makes sense to invest.
So, like, on the financial, I come from a financial perspective. So, but I'm thinking if this is a subscription-based company, do they understand how subscription revenue versus cash flow are completely different things?
Yeah, but at the early stage, that almost doesn't matter, right?
Okay.
Like GAAP accounting for subscription revenue is almost irrelevant when you're three founders and a dog. It gets
When
more
they're
important.
reporting back to you,
Yeah.
like I've invested in a company that was reporting this is how much cash came in, and they were interpreting that as recurring revenue.
Right.
And I just want to know that the founder like understands and tells me the thing that's relevant, not the cash thing.
So, Pete, you just turned on your video. Does that mean you have a question?
No, it means I just turned on my video, mate.
Okay, fair enough. All right, that's good.
I don't, you know me, I have strong opinions on these things, so I'll keep quiet.
All right, fair
We
enough.
like strong opinions.
Yeah, well, but that'll take us out about 4 hours. And
Yeah.
there's not enough beer in the room for that 4 hours yet. Timo, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Hey, John. So, real quick question for folks out there. It was mentioned that AI is a superpower, which it is, but it's also a superpower that can be used very wrong. You prompt it, if you don't understand the question, or if you're trying to understand an industry or something like that, and you prompt it incorrectly, you might get very, very misleading. I don't want to say misleading. They're going to be accurate answers, but the question wasn't put in the right structure, so that the answer might give you a misguided direction that you're trying to drive for. So how do you all train yourself, if you will, to become better at the AI prompting, so you're not asking just kind of like a generic question and then you get this, some pattern recognition thing that gives you an answer that's really not helping you, but what it might actually do is misguide you?
Yeah, I mean, I saw Jason put a response in the comments, but he's absolutely correct. It is your obligation to get good at AI. Like I always tell my children, if you want to get good at something, you practice it. And I tell the people that work for me the same thing. You want to get good at AI and really maximize what it can put out in terms of CPG and the day-to-day that we do. The only way you can do that is by using it. It's that simple, and understanding how it's going to, be pleasing, or how it's trying to please you, and then poke holes, do different things. Prompting is like anything else in life. You just have to practice it and do it and read about it. And that goes back to, I think, a core element of the best people in business: natural curiosity, right? So just you stay motivated, you stay curious.
Yeah, I mean, every inbound pitch deck that comes to us that's not from a trusted referral is evaluated by AI first. And if it passes that evaluation, then the AI actually selects the subject matter experts in our group based on its knowledge of them from LinkedIn and their application and everything else. So we're doing that right at the front of the process on every deal. I mean, Dario at Anthropic, said it best. Like, AI is, every data center is a country of experts. So like, if we're not going to take advantage of a free country of experts to help us evaluate a deal, and try it. Like, if you point AI to a data room and a pitch deck, it's amazing how much insight it gives you on whether that company is investable. And it doesn't mean it's going to be right or wrong, but that gets us back to the topic we said early on, where everybody has a truth that nobody believes, including AI. And, they probably wouldn't have thought that Travis was going to create a new taxi paradigm, right? Or young Bill Gates was going to create the PC move. So like, I mean, that's part of the fun part of this.
You kind of.
So what would you suggest that a founder ask an AI about their data room and pitch deck, so that they're ahead of that question?
The same thing, right? Like the same, like, what's wrong with my business model? What's not believable in what I'm about to do this presentation? Or the advanced founder can literally have a two-way, bi-directional, full duplex conversation with the new GPT live that, and literally have them evaluate their deal. And yeah, is it going to be perfect? No, but I think a lot of people are surprised how much value that drives.
Hey, one thing I just want to add here. So I work on this area a lot. So there's a couple of things you have to understand. If you think of an LLM as basically a large word space, the entry point is very important on how it traverses the map, right? So one of the things that's interesting here is that if I go to an LLM and I ask it a simple question, one of the things you have to do is you have to have a lot of reading experience to actually have the language skills to write the correct prompts. So one of the things you have to do is be able to read a lot. So I'll give you an example of this. One of the things that happens is that one of the books that people have been talking about is Pattern Breakers. It's a fantastic read, really funny. He talks about how he missed out on investing in Airbnb. But one of his key things is there's 3 trends in the market and your counterintuitive, non-intuitive idea, which is where true high return investment comes from, because no one else is going to compete with you, right? What you have to understand is that when you go to LLMs, they're naturally statistically smoothing. So a lot of people, they put stuff into an LLM and it goes, it's a great idea, or they go, it's a terrible idea. But the thing is, it will smooth everything. So you really want to use it to ask a set of questions around your thesis. But then what you have to do is really understand what you're trying to do. Yeah. Because classic example is if you turned around and talked about Uber, if you look at Uber and you say, hey, I want to develop a taxi system. Well, if you put that into an LLM and it's got no training data on that, it'll go, that's a really stupid idea. Right?
Right, but it's no different than traditional research. Like if you go to the library and you make a low quality effort in library books, it's like at the end of the day, you have to ask the right questions, no matter who you're asking.
I think this is, Dean, one of the key theses is you have to be very careful of asking the right questions. I've done a lot of work in building those systems where I can predict hidden needs and in financial markets. So I built the first fluidic model of financial movement of money, right? So we generated $6 billion. So I think I know about it. The question to me here is when people are doing this stuff, I think the most important thing was one of the points that Jack said, find a bunch of people that you can talk to who can critique the idea or support it, because you also need some people who believe in it. Yeah, that's my point.
I use a lot in the writing space as well. I read a lot, and I think I agree with Pete 100%. There is the dime store novel and Shakespeare within the LLM. It's your job to pull out the Shakespeare, and it's the same kind of thing in this case, right? Like the point is that if you just ask it, if you just think about it generically, if you just say these kind of things, you're gonna get the smooth, meeting answer. Which, one of the things to think about, that's not bad if that's what you're looking for. On the Dean's point, you're like, critique my data room for this. Part of it, I'm asking, like, I want the median to start with. I want the median response. What's the median LP gonna say? Like, you're missing X, Y, and Z, and then using it to go deeper. So, like, understanding what the output is going to be, and what you're using it for is, I think, as valuable as asking the right. And it's not even asking the questions. Like, probably it's the right discussion, it's the right structure, it's the right framing, and kind of thing. But yeah, I completely agree with Pete.
Yeah, and iterating, like, no, chat, you got it wrong. You were perceiving it this way, but it's really this way. And then like, oh, apologies, and then you like get back on track. Or they say, no, you got it wrong, and you have a blind spot, right? It's.
So
Hey,
I want to.
Sorry, John.
All right, go ahead,
Timo.
Timo.
Question. I thought it's very. Thank you, everyone, because actually it makes me feel a little bit better that y'all are actually practicing. I was just worried about some people seem to think that when you say AI is a superpower, it's like, okay, I'm just going to rely on it. But I think that everybody's at least made me feel better that everybody's using it more intelligently than just kind of going with whatever it says, because I think that's the key that a lot of people kind of fall into. It becomes too dependable because it seems to be giving such a cohesive answer, but it's giving a cohesive answer to perhaps not a good question. So anyway, I just wanted to.
The key point you just said there, if you're using AI as a crutch, you're not going to make it. If you're using it as a tool and a superpower, you're going to be doing well.
Perfect.
So,
Thank
and
you.
especially what David was saying in the chat a little bit about having it expose the data that's there and missing, and giving you a broader view of things quickly. I want to go back to a statement that was made earlier, which was most angel investors should be LPs, not angel investors. And so I want to distinguish what an LP from an angel investor is, and I want to sort of unpack the old white story that was told earlier a little bit. So one of the diseases of angel groups is that people come into angel groups, they write too many checks, they're too big, they're too fast, and then they discover that they should slow down, so they slow down, but it's fun to be in an angel group, so they stay in the angel group and they continue to be part of the angel group for a long time, writing fewer and fewer checks, asking weirder and weirder questions, and having fun, but not funding companies. And so we'd like to have mechanisms to avoid that. One of the mechanisms is to do a fund instead of an angel group where there's money on the table already and it's going. But one of the other mechanisms to do this is to understand your role and to use the right title. So, Dean, I think you were the one that started with the failure points thing. Were you the one that said LP, not angel?
No, that was that was
That
Jason.
was Jason. Okay, Jason, would you tell me what the difference between an angel and an LP is in that statement that you just made?
Sure. LP is limited partner in what usual cases in like a VC fund.
Yeah, so
And
I have a group of people. They're all accredited. They're all writing checks. How would an LP be behaving differently than an angel?
so the structure of an LP is you are committing to a blind pool run by a professional VC, like depending on, everything from, fund one emerging managers to like Andreessen Horowitz, right? Like that's the structure.
Yeah, no, I wanna push back on that. The professional management or not doesn't make you less of an LP, because we have plenty of micro VCs that are amateur GPs.
That's fair. I mean professional in the sense of that this is likely their job.
Right.
Like
So,
because
I could have a group of people that are in an active angel fund where there's no GP and everybody is an active angel. Or I could have an active group of people where one person is the GP and everybody else is an LP, and it's, just a decision-making difference, right?
No. So the Dean, I've used this before, so it might be a bad thing. But it's the taking the new fund is there are no LPs. It is 250 GPs. Everybody's
Yep.
making decisions, right?
A
Everybody votes.
member managed.
Right. I understand that. That's when I say LP in this case, that's not what I mean. I'm meaning
Yep.
LP is you might be asked for things, but you are likely silent capital. So it's like investing in any fund.
To be clear, you're required by law to be silent capital. You are a limited partner that can have no participation in the management of the fund, right? Yeah.
So, but the point being that there are plenty, good VCs will also lean on their LPs for interest in different things. So you do not have, but the point is you have no, as Steve was saying, you have no decision-making authority. You are giving the decision-making authority to the GP, the general partner, to then make these decisions on behalf of it. There are usually structured as regular capital calls at different times. You're saying, okay, I'm investing X amount in, and then there are like any of these kinds of things, there are fees to that. The standard fee is 2 and 20, 2% management fee, 20% carry. And so my point on this is that whenever somebody says, it goes back to our working in this, if somebody says, I want access to the investment class, like startups as an investment class, which is a wonderful thing to say, is very different than saying, I want to be the ones making the decision or making the decision. So it's something like that we struggle with all the time, and we're trying to do this, is there's an amazing hard tech scene and defense tech and stuff in here in Austin. And the idea of me going and saying, I'm going to go pick those companies and which ones outside of like, I know that like, we made a very small check versus saying, I'm going to go pick the manager and be an LP in this hard tech fund. And that's the way I'm going to get exposure into that because I think that's a valuable thing.
I think of it as an angel investor, I'm directly investing my money versus as an LP in a fund, I'm providing money to somebody else and trusting them to make the decisions.
But
you make one decision on the manager or on the fund.
The weird part that is hidden in the middle of this is that in normal angel networks where the companies come and get filtered and you see 3 companies a month, there's a bunch of people that act as GPs by being a loud voice. And then there's a number of people who act as LPs where they look at the loud voice and they say, okay, he did a good job because I trust him. I'm going to write a check. I haven't done my due diligence. I haven't really made a decision. All I'm doing is acting like an LP, but pretending to be an angel. And I think that's the thing that Jason was pointing at, right?
That gets brought into the group dynamic issues of angel groups.
I would describe it as the following, is that the problem with being an angel investor is you can be stupid on your own. The advantage of being a limited partner is that you have the ability to turn around and say, we'll be right together or be wrong together, but I won't be an idiot on my own. And one of the things that John does that's very powerful with the Seattle group is I think he's highlighting a very important point, is that the discussion in an angel group is very beneficial. Some people take it too far and should be killed. But in general, there's a lot of value in having that discussion between a group of investors because it's easy to bamboozle a single person. It's much harder to bamboozle 4 people, right? But the characteristic and the value in being a limited partner is that you're outsourcing the intelligence to people who are doing it every day, right?
It's no different than an ETF, right? It's no different than say, I want to invest in the semiconductor space, or I want to invest in, it's just earlier stage, right? And it's a little bit more expensive.
The risk profiles are different, but the economics of it are that, it's pattern matching. Why do I use Oric as a law firm? Because they do all the negotiation for me. They see it every day. Where if I was doing it, I'm probably doing it 10 times a year. And to me, it's as I want someone who's doing it every day, because also it's a lot less of a headache. Yeah. But the power in that really is in these meetings is you get to meet a bunch of people and then you can learn from each other. And the most powerful thing you can do is go read a book, because then you don't have to experience the mistakes. You read about the mistakes before you enact them, right? And I think that's, to me at least, is one of the most important things about both angel investing, venture capital. Private equity is completely different. There we're much smarter, but we're spending 10 million on the investigation.
So going back to the angel groups, we have angel groups in the traditional way. In Seattle, we'll say Alliance of Angels is the epitome of that, where it's individuals coming in and doing investments as a group, where people self-select into a due diligence group and then join or not join on their own. But then in the last decade, the Alliance of Angels has now produced an annual fund where that annual fund is acting more like what Dean was saying for New Fund, where everybody in the group is a GP, where everybody together does the work, everybody does the deal sourcing, everybody does the decision making. And we're not adding in the fee question that Jason talked about earlier, right? Where you're being a professional GP and you're taking a fee structure along the way to pay for the process of being the organizer of the group, right?
Well, and if the group is big enough, so we have 320 members, 350, I don't know how many now, but a typical deal is only screened by the subject matter experts. Like our process is, most of our members are investing $10,000 to $100,000 a year in our annual fund. That fund is investing in roughly 15 to 20 companies each year. We're in our 9th vintage, so we're in about 200 companies through the fund. And when we get a medtech cardiac device, we have our cardiac people who are looking at it. If 5 of them get inspired, they write up a recommendation form. If anybody thinks we shouldn't invest, they put their dissenting voice on the form. And then if there's 5 recommenders, it goes to a vote of all of our members. It's almost always a rubber stamp at that point because we trust our brothers and sisters who are the experts. And so we've kind of broken up the more of like the entertainment. We're all sitting in the audience. We're trying to come up with the best question to be the smartest person in the room. Like we've kind of killed a lot of that in the interest of moving quickly. And to Jason's point, finding the best founders and having them tolerate, taking $300K to $1 million from a group instead of, at the country club or, from a fund.
Yeah, I think the notion of moving quickly is important to highlight here. I think that some of the groups in Seattle have a goal of between the time we hear about them to the time I make a decision is 6 weeks is their goal. I'm hearing that it's different for you, Dean. I wonder if there's a specific time or amount of engagement that you're expecting in your decisions, Jack?
Never more than 30 days in due diligence. 80% of our deals get to a yes or no after the first due diligence meeting. And the reason we did that is because over decades, we found that once you have sentiment after the due diligence meeting, it almost never changes. So why are we taking another 2 months? It doesn't make any sense, right? And so,
Right.
So at the end of the due diligence meeting, we excuse the founder, we talk to the people on the call and we say, are you a yes? Are you a no? Or are you a yes if? And a yes if is there's discrete boxes that still need to be checked. I want to talk to a customer. I want to look at the patent, whatever those are. And I'll be a yes contingent on that. Otherwise, it's not a question of like open-ended. Do you want to do more due diligence? Do you want to spend more time talking to them? We've just gotten all the, we got the data room. We just spent an hour and a half with the founder. It's time to, give it a yes or no.
But I think there's something important here that I think a lot of people miss out on when they go and interact with a venture capital firm. They think the venture capital firm is looking to say yes, and we're not. We're trying to find the fastest way to say no. So like, I will meet someone and go, blah, 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 blah. I'll ask them a couple of questions and I go, thanks, love you, bye. And they're like, you never interacted with me after that. And I go, yeah, because I'm not investing. I'm not spending any time.
That's the most powerful thing you could do for a founder, though. Like, is a fast no is the second best thing after a fast yes, right?
Yeah. And if you're feeling nice, you tell them why.
Well, right? Or you do one step further. You have your executive director in your group find a path for them. So it's a no, but I'm going to introduce you to 3 other people or 6 other people who are maybe.
I never, if I say no, I won't introduce them to anyone. Flat out, I will not do any.
Yeah, but you're playing a different role in that.
Yeah, we do the opposite. Yeah.
Our as an ecosystem developer, where your goal is to get
that's a good point.
People over on the sides to mature themselves a little bit because they're a little bit much in their own little rat hole. Doing the introduction, like Dean was talking about, making sure you give, we try to provide 3 different things that if you had answered those, you would have gotten further so that people mature along the way. Or if those steps that we gave them are unachievable for them, they can get to I should not be doing this and get out of that game. Because the last thing you want is for them to have false hope that there's a pathway that they're going to get funded for the next 5 years of hunting down this road where the answer is going to always be no from everybody, right?
So I'll just color this. When I'm talking to a company about investment, or if we're doing due diligence, I'll introduce them to lots of people. But as soon as we say it's no, we're done. And people are often surprised about that. I say, no, I love you, but I'm not talking to you because I'm talking to other people. And if a company's failing, there's a point where I put a lot of investment of time in and I go, okay, we're done. And they go, you're not coming to the board meetings? I said, no, you're dying. I'm seeing you. And they're like really surprised. I go, it's time. It's finite.
It's also reputation. If you send a dog to somebody that you have ongoing relationships with, then,
yeah,
it's risky.
Why
Yeah,
did
we're
you
not sending a
Absolutely.
introduce me
dog.
to a serial killer?
We're not sending a dog. We're sending a deal that's too early for us or not in our thesis to an incubator who's perfect for
Right.
it, right? Who, like, the dogs don't go anywhere. The dogs are hard nosed.
Yeah, I want to, Angela asked the question, like, what if it's not part of your thesis? It very much depends on how they got to me, right? If someone's sending me a blind email, it's not my thesis, they're an idiot because they're like, it says everywhere that this kind of thing. If it's like, oh, I had a good network and so said, hey, you should meet so-and-so that they're moving here. And I'm like, oh, you're in, marketplaces or vertical AI. I'm like, yeah, I've got two, friends who've got funds in that space. So it depends on that first, like, oh, are they interesting on this? That's actually, I mean, I get a ton of deal flow that way. Is there people who are like, I get Series A firms saying like, this is too early for us, or I've got, these same people saying like, oh, yeah, I like it for this reason, but it's got a bio element. Can you just look at this? So we're always kind of trading stuff around in that. To Dean's point, like I would, if I'm like, this is terrible, I would never send it to somebody, but there has to be enough there. And, for me, a lot of the ways, because this is back to kind of the scars, is I'm very like how the deal got to me, right? And if it's like the way the deal got to me is important. I think it was like Mark Andreessen said this, something I'm paraphrasing, where they're like, yeah, we only like warm handoffs kind of situation, and it's like you're out and available, like. It's actually not that hard to get to these people and going in, but if you didn't put in the work to do that, says something. This is the thing with the founder.
So I want to turn the conversation a little bit. I heard from Jack that the CPG space is full of accelerators where people from the industry have created a support network to make it possible to get your little startup going. How important is an accelerator or an incubator of some kind to your deal flow sourcing, right? What percentage of your total deals that you're looking at come out of these institutionally structured support systems before investment? Jack, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that these incubators, to be frank, can often be set up almost like a private equity type group, right? You've got LPs, you've got GPs. So you've got people writing checks as LPs, and you've got 3, 4, 5 GPs that run it, essentially. So I would say getting into I wouldn't call them numerous. They're certainly there. But getting into it is a lot of what Jason was saying. It's honestly network. We always joke in CPG, it's not a big industry, so you don't burn any bridges, right? So the way deals flow is very oftentimes word of mouth, past successes, history of basically product fit or launching something successful. So it's not necessarily easy to break into those if I'm being truthful.
Okay, and what percentage of your deals come from that sourcing for you?
Well, I mean, I'm more of an operator, right? So like, I'm not a traditional angel investor at this point in my career. I'm more focused on building the businesses versus investing in the businesses. Obviously, I do some investment in businesses as well. So I would say I don't have a great answer on that, John, specifically. What I've seen though is that there's really two ways you get pre-seed money in CPG. It's through one of these incubators that we're talking about, which again has some sort of a previous connection in some way, shape, or form, or it's family and friends. And there's quite a few of the bootstrap family and friends types that are raising between 250 and $1 million, right, or something like that early along the way, really, so that they can build some inventory to sell.
Right. Dean, how about you? What percentage of your deal flow is coming from some kind of pre-funding accelerator, incubator, or venture studio?
It's a little bit of a trick question because that's a little bit of a continuum. So we get a lot from what I'll call our micro VC partners. So like micro VCs, are they venture studios? Are they incubators? They typically invested at a very, very early, kind of round and valuation. We certainly get deal flow from accelerators. I'd say more though, we get deal flow from very, very trusted industry contacts.
So like 60-70% from warm handoffs.
I would say 90% from warm handoffs, including the accelerators, right?
Okay.
And 10% probably that are truly over the transom that we're interested in, that catch our attention in some way.
All right, cool. And how about for you, Jason?
I get a lot of inbound. I don't talk usually talk a lot, but yeah, I mean, it's like 99% coming from, whether it's the founder networks, whether it's the VC networks. So,
So
I
as
almost want,
an
like,
investor, you
if someone's
spend
blasting me blind on LinkedIn or X, like, I'm
Yeah, but
generally not interested.
if you look at it mathematically, right, venture capital is a gravity function. So if you look at A16 and the large funds, essentially because everyone knows their name, they send a lot of stuff to them. Their problem is their cost function on filtering is extremely high, but they have a large amount of capital. The small funds, which are somewhere between 10 and 15 million, their problem is that no one knows about them, so they can't get hold of them. But then what they're trying to do really is be lucky, because if they get one very successful, and usually just between you and me, right, some of my investments are pure luck. Anyone who tells you that I was smart is a liar, including me. Yeah. It was just like, yeah, he seems like a good guy. Give him some money. See ya. But the point being is, and there's actually two women involved, I can say that about as well. But the point is, you look at those two functions, right? The problem is you also have to understand a venture capital firm has a thesis. So we actually we have bosses too. We've gone to people and said, give us your money because we're going to invest in this area. And we think we know how to do it. So the key thing is, and this is a really important point that Dean said, is a fast no is really important. If you go to a VC and they say no, say thank you, why? If they tell you why, you can get better, right? So a friend of mine got invested in from Bessemer, and he rings me up because he's depressed, because he said, I've talked to 37 VCs and everyone's told me I'm an idiot, right? And I said, 37? And he goes, yeah. And I burst out laughing. And he goes, why are you laughing? I said, dude, that's nothing. Ring me back when you've got to 150. It was the 57th call that got him the $6 million investment. And that was where have you been in my life? We're looking for this. You're perfect. Let's do diligence, right? So you have to understand that if everyone said yes, you're in the wrong game, because then everyone else is doing what you're doing. You're no longer non-intuitive. In fact, you're just like a kid playing with a football, but you're following the football. You're not guiding the football. So the thing you're looking for is you need a lot of people to say this is stupid, because the people who are telling you it's stupid are not going to compete with you. Yeah. The really smart people don't tell anyone that they're doing anything. They just do it, right? It's like when I was a kid with my second company, we went to a pub and these guys who were competing with us said, how's the business? I said, it's crap. My customers hate me. My employees hate me. Everything's awful. I said, are you hiring? And they went, no. I went, oh, sorry. And my brother turns around and goes, why did you do that? I said, why did I want to educate a competitor? Took them 8 years to figure out I was making money hand over fist.
There you go. There you go. So I want to make sure that we give enough time for people to ask questions. And I see Vikash here, who's played the investor role, but now is playing the startup role. Vikash, are you paying attention down there?
Yeah, I am John. Thanks for inviting me. No, I was just listening to the discussion. First of all, thank you so much for debating. That produces a lot of valuable content. I've been building my own company called Godel Space. We try to build autonomous agents for satellites so that we don't have to download all the data. We just download the insights only, which is exponentially lesser in size. And we have that product applicability in various verticals. We are currently solving for the disaster analytics. and that's our space. And we have recently put our software, fingers crossed, in orbit. In a few weeks, it's probably in orbit, if everything goes well. And but I think that's what we do. And based on what I'm hearing about the conversation today, I'm just curious to know, with this kind of a business that I just described, which is edge-based autonomous agents for the satellites with various verticals, applicability, infrastructure monitoring, wildfire monitoring, and many other verticals. Is this something that the angel investing community would be interested in? And if so, how should I be?
I wanna stop you right there.
Ah,
So what I just heard you ask was feature, 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 and not asking me about the business. And so you didn't tell me anything about the customer and the value proposition and any of the things that makes it go. So I'm going to suspect that everybody here would tell you, no, that's not interesting, and you would interpret it incorrectly. So let's back up a half a step. Tell us what the value proposition you're creating is, and then we'll hear what their answers are.
yeah, so my customers are insurance industry and first responders, to whom I'm giving an opportunity to define a mission. The mission being monitor this area of interest for me, for flood, for fire, and give me the analytics around that. Like what structures will be affected because of a given flood. We had a fire recently in Spokane.
And how does that translate into dollars for the company or customers for the company or business propositions for the company?
Yeah, for the insurance industry, it is primarily trying to understand the extent of the damage ahead of time, and also to issue parametric insurance based on automatic analysis. So that's the value for them.
So I use the word dollars. So I'm looking for you to be able to say to the insurance company that we can cut your costs for building a model by N%, or we can drive 15 times the amount of business because now you can insure things now because you have data where you didn't have data before. Again, I want to hand this to Jason to answer, but I don't think you've got enough focus for him to give you a good answer yet.
I mean, the short version is, one, you got to reframe the question. Are angels invested in? Like, that's too, like, back to like piece like the 57 call got part of the question for us is, and this is on the founder side, is you have to find the right people. Like pitching a SaaS investor on hard tech, like, what are you doing? Right? That shouldn't even count in your number, right? I mean, that's the joke, but like the number of like over the transom, emails or like LinkedIn or whatever that I get that are so clearly just blast. They're like, oh, I've got a gaming company. What planet does it look like I do anything in gaming, right? And so, yeah, of course, like, look, hard tech, space, satellite, I mean, like, we have a whole number of space and satellite companies, right? Doing a lot of different things. But to understand that, the question is like, okay, so yes, the space has stuff. Who is it that's investing in it? And then finding that. If you ask them the broad question of just like our angels, it's like saying, are VCs invested in this? Well, probably. I can't tell you which one's up, for A, B, or C. As Pete said, like everybody's got a thesis. Do you fit the thesis of that firm? And then how do you go and find your way in?
Yeah, I mean, when I entered these rooms, I mostly saw a lot of concentration around the health industry and the medical industry, but not too much in the space from the angel investing side of things. So I was just curious if anyone does this even fit your thesis? Is the question, where the business model is I'm providing a value to the insurance providers and the first responders in terms of monitoring a given area of interest and giving them analytics around it as to how many structures are affected. So that's one line of business. And the other revenue stream, and John, please tell me if I'm way off here, and I'll shut my mouth here. But the other revenue stream is I'm licensing my IP to the satellite operators, so that when my software is deployed on the satellites, it also helps them cross-sell and upsell to their customers.
So
For using
what
my
I'm
service.
looking for when you say that is the business case. And the business case needs to be characterized. And so I give them this data, and because of this data, they have a benefit that is bounded that I can talk about, right? They save this amount of time, they gain that amount of dollars, something there. I'm selling this, licensing this stuff to them, and the consequence of that license is that there's some characterized financial benefit, right? Like Kathleen would love to sit down and do a cash flow projection of how that turns into customer revenue. And then that characterization then is something that allows us to talk about the business case, right? But when you have the idea that the thing is going to be useful, but you haven't quantified how it will affect the client engagement, then it's really a hard question to answer, right? And then, you know,
I mean, those details will be there in the pitch deck, John. I mean, I can present that,
Well,
right?
let me give you some advice on this, right? Because I got to be quick because I got to leave. But this is the way I would do it. I never talk about the solution, ever. The reason is, if I go to someone and talk to them about a solution, they'll compete with me and go, I can do better. I want them to select into my problem. So if, like, I'll give you an example. I'm writing an email to someone at the moment saying, hey, I saw this really interesting company. I really like the problem they're working on. And let me explain what they're doing. This is the problem, but this problem is very large. It's kind of interesting. So the way you're doing it, you're going, I got a technology. Do you want it? No one cares. The more interesting thing is to turn around and go, hey, you know, I was working in the insurance industry and I used to get this problem all the time, man. And it was so painful. And let me tell you a story about how I interacted with the CIO. And, you know, he turned around to me and said, you should build a company around this. And I kind of thought about it. And I talked to a couple of other people, and I think this is the problem. And the problem is broad. But I think this little bit of it, if I solve that, people will pay me money. I've already talked to 3 companies, and they verified that they would pay me $72 per person. What do you think? How could I improve it? And then, so look, I've done this a lot because I'm old and grumpy. But the difference then is, if I do that, the person then, if I do that to Dean, Dean wants to give me advice. Dean wants to make me better. He's got way more experience than me. Yeah. I just want to shut up and listen. And then Dean will turn around and go, hey, man, it's an interesting problem. You should talk to these people in my group because they're experts. And I go, that would be awesome. I would really appreciate that. Yeah.
And would you, I heard you, and my one follow-up question to that is, would you say the same if one is building the platform as well, where you're building a generic platform and you're trying to prove the platform with one vertical?
Never talk to people. Never talk to me about a platform. The number of people who come to me and go, Pete, I'm building a platform. I'm going to be a billionaire. And I literally will turn around and go, actually, John will tell me off because I swear a lot. So I will literally say something rude to them and go, I don't care. And they go, what? I go, listen, you can have the biggest market in the world. I don't care. Who's the first buyer?
Okay.
Why are they buying it? And how much will they pay you? And have you signed a contract?
I mean, what I always look for is who is going to make money or save money by by adopting your product, and is it enough for them to care? And I'll share with you, like, when I hear an insurance value proposition, I roll my eyes a little bit because everybody thinks they're going to like open up the insurance business, but like it needs to be so overwhelmingly like no-brainer, actuarially sound, and those are very, very hard. And I don't even know what you meant by first responders, because first responders are not going to be paying you anything for this. So, and that's just based on our current conversation, right? I mean, this is a longer form conversation. This isn't a group
This,
thing.
this is the kind of conversation that you need to go take one of the local investors that are near you out for beer and talk about it. Oh, by the way, that's tonight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So,
And we'll have some beers today, John.
and David is going to be there, and I think Kathleen is going to be there, so you can have both a beer and a conversation in some detail. And with
Awesome.
that, I think we've come to time. Sadly, Dean had to, Jack had to leave. But thank you, Jason, and thank you, Dean, for doing this. It was a great talk. It's really insightful to see the kinds of things that you're working on. I really appreciate your support for that. Is there anything about Austin or San Diego that you would like this audience to know about?
I think we're all very similar. Like we're all, at some level a tier 2 market behind the Bay Area, right? And there's opportunities for angel investors in tier 2 markets. I would be irrelevant in the Bay Area. I'm not irrelevant in San Diego. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. How about you, Jason?
I'd take a very different stance with Austin's rocketing up. So like we are entering tier 1 rapidly. And the fact is that when Dean and I pushed, you absolutely need angel investors in SF. The structure looks different, but the angel investing is, or the angels is absolutely needed, right? We need that pace of everything. And yeah, like whether you are, in San Diego or in Austin or the Bay or Seattle, Seattle's a huge market, right? Like this stuff is needed.
Absolutely.
And this is kind of Captain Obvious stuff, but the, Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing connection, is fertile ground for so much cool stuff, right?
Totally. Tens of thousands of things going. Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
John, I don't care. I don't need to be number one. I just need to make a lot of money. And the thing is, I'll do it very quietly and no one will know. And the point being is
And
I'm
there's
investing.
plenty of opportunity.
No, but I'm investing in France, I'm investing in Europe, I'm investing all over the world, and I'm not telling anyone. The point being is that I just have to go back to my LPs and say, hey, dude, it's a good return. And they go, Pete, we love you. I go, that's cool.
Yep,
And
there you go.
that's the thesis.
There you go. So, Brian, you have your hand up.
Gotta run. Take care.
Last question.
Yeah,
Pete,
man, I'll be
Pete,
there.
you got to send me a text about where I'm going to catch you.
I've done that.
Okay, great.
I'm slightly organized.
Yeah,
Look, actually, this was really great. I apologize if I talk too much. I love you, darlings. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Brian?
All right, I hit go. I'll be there tonight. I've signed up. I finished it 5 minutes ago.
All right, great.
So I'm in for the journey here.
Great. Wonderful. And with that, we're going to put the recording of this up on the YouTube channel. We have on the 27th, 2 workshops that are going to be interesting. One is a 60-minute or 60-second pitch thing for the startups that are coming in to help them get things going. And then one is a meet the funders so that our investors can get a sense of who the other investors in the community are. Yes, Bedram.
So actually, I have got the same invite, the 60-second. So I was just about to ask what exactly the 60-second, is it going to the presentation 60-second, or I'm just going to explain it?
So at the 60 seconds, we will on September 1st do a 1-minute pitch of all the participating companies. And they have 60 seconds to present themselves. And they have to end up being remarkable enough that people want to know about it. And we find that if we practice and train a little bit ahead of time, that everybody does better. So that's what that workshop's about.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks everyone for being here. I really appreciate your time and energy. And see you at the next meeting.
Great. Thanks, John.
Bye. Thank you so much.